Well, there's nothing like our choir to create a beautiful climate in this sanctuary. I can feel so much aliveness and joy in the room right now. And I am so grateful to get to be here in the midst of it. So we're beginning a week of celebrating our country's independence and freedom. And let's say a big thank you to the audio team and all that they do every Sunday, from up here on the podium to back there in their magical cocoon, and what they do throughout the entire world so that our little church, is it really little, big consciousness, that's for sure, can make a global impact every Sunday. Thank you. Well, so we're celebrating our country's independence and freedom, but we can also celebrate the great gift that our Creator gave us, which is our free will. And what this means is that you have the freedom to admit the truth of your oneness with the presence and the power that created all that is and is one with its creation, or you could ignore that and completely focus on the distractions of living in the density of time and space as a human body. And that is very easy to do with all the drama and the duality going on in our world. What we're going to be exploring today is the importance of what we focus on and using this creative power that's our divine inheritance, and then choose our thoughts based on that. I'm basing my talk on a quote by Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore about creating a mental climate. And the first slide is this entire quote. Our thought atmosphere is the surrounding mental climate created by each person in accordance with the character of their thinking. Thoughts of negation build an antagonistic and discordant atmosphere. Thoughts of love, prosperity, health, and faith create a harmonious mental atmosphere. Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore. The more I reflected on this quote, the more I realized there's a lot of depth to it, and I would like to unpack it with you one sentence at a time. So in our next slide, we look at simply the first sentence. Our thought atmosphere is the surrounding mental climate. And what struck me about this phrase is that what he is saying here is that our thoughts don't just stay in between our ears. Our thoughts and the energetic vibration of them and the feeling that they create within us ripples out to create an entire surrounding mental climate. That is how powerful the presence that we are one with is, and how our focus and use of it can make an impact. And this is created by each one of us in accordance with the character of our thinking. So when I read the word character, I had the thought of, well, what if I see my thoughts as a character? What if this thought is that grumpy, curmudgeon-y one instead of that ugly, unministerial one? What if this thought is that, oh, that little mouse from Disney with big ears and big eyes and an innocent face instead of a scared one that should grow up and be brave? What if we kind of play with our thoughts and our reactions to them instead of judging them harshly? But I think even more important is, what are we doing with our afterthoughts? Are we letting them control the show? If I have a thought of, I think I might look good today, my next thought is, oh, this hair is out of place. Oh, the makeup is uneven. Oh, you should have put on makeup to hide all of this stuff. What about the afterthoughts that we have? What are we doing with them? Well, when the moment comes that we have a thought spiral that we notice and we want to shift out of it, the very highest consciousness that we can move into is Unity's first two principles. And I will keep saying them over and over again until you'll say, I know what's going to come out of her mouth next. Unity's first two principles, so brilliant, so simple, so true. All there is God, and God is good. And that includes me. And if no matter where we kind of start to take ourselves astray, we end up bringing ourselves back there. We're in the truth, we're in the highest consciousness, we're in the highest vibration, and man, are we going to be creating a surrounding mental climate that's going to be a beautiful one to be in. So let's take now a look at the second sentence of this amazing quote from our Unity co-founder. And it's on our slide. Thoughts of negation build an antagonistic and discordant atmosphere. What's interesting to me about this line is that Charles Fillmore is an extremely, ultimately, brilliantly precise master of words. And he and Myrtle created the philosophy of positive thinking, so much so that when Charles was in conversations with another master of our time in that moment, Norman Vincent Peale, Mr. Peale says, hey, you know, that's a pretty good title for what I'm doing right now. I think I'll use it. Charles says, yeah, go for it. So positive thinking, the movement, the philosophy that Norman Vincent Peale preached is actually based on conversations with Charles Fillmore. So if he meant to say negative thinking builds an antagonistic and discordant atmosphere, he would have. That's what he would have said, but that's not what he said. Thoughts of negation. So that got me to realizing maybe I don't know what negation means after all. I think I do, but realizing that if Charles Fillmore hadn't specifically wanted to use that word, he wouldn't have, made me curious. So I went to the Oxford Dictionary, and one of the two meanings that it had is that a negation is to make a negative meaning. So what Charles Fillmore in his brilliance is saying to us here is that we have the power in how we focus on our thoughts to make something negative in its meaning. It doesn't objectively fall out of the sky, universally labeled negative. It's up to us to give it that meaning. Do we want to be doing that? As often as we do, at least? And then going back to the previous sentence, the thought we allow to stay and become part of our thought atmosphere is also something we have the power to make by how and what we focus our attention. What thoughts are we creating and focusing on? The question we should greet each one of our thoughts with. When we decide, do we want this to stay, let alone, is this what I want to be focusing the next 20 minutes on? Because we can send ourselves into a thought spiral that can go for that long. Well, okay, we're in unity and we want to be positive thinkers, and so we think positive, and so all we do is we think positive, and when an anger feeling comes up, then we label it bad, we say it's bad, but no, bad is not good, so I only think good, and so, well, anger is good, and heat is good, and burning is good, and there comes a point where you know what happens when you're only in sunshine all the time? You become a desert. You become dry, you become brittle, you become one of the animals of the desert that has a very hard shell. We need it all. And so I want to invite us to, instead of dulling our creativity with labeling things positive or negative, good or bad, to instead start to focus our thinking on, how does this thought make me feel? Do I feel positive? Do I feel peaceful? Do I feel loving? Do I feel optimistic? Do I feel open? Do I feel friendly? Do I feel soft? And then allow our attention to go to what does create that sort of a feeling in us. Instead of judging and criticizing with our feelings, can we just love them the way they are? And you know what happens if we do? Just like any other person, when they feel safe to be them and to have been heard and seen, they go on their way to be happy and be them. We're in a time now of moving into a consciousness that goes beyond thinking and words. Scary thing. But that's more or less what we're moving more and more into, because we're moving into the frequency and vibration of energy. And instead of wondering if a thought is positive or negative, we're moving into wondering how high is the frequency this thought is allowing me to vibrate at. Because after you sang zippity-doo-dah, after you sang and heard on a clear day, couldn't you feel the buzz of aliveness within you? You know what? The surrounding people could feel that from you as well. This is the type of level of being and consciousness and field of consciousness that we are stepping into and moving into. And so I want to invite us to take a look at, when we say the character of our thinking, what Charles Fillmore was really talking about is, what is the energetic vibration of our thinking and the frequency of feeling that it produces? And that's how brilliant our co-founder was, that even without saying it in 2025, you're going to be using this on a day, on a Sunday, and it's going to help you with your thinking. But that's what happens when someone is so brilliant that they speak the truth. It's timeless. And it can go 100 years further and still be just as true as it was then. So when he was talking about character, he again chose a very specific word to talk about this presence that we say we're one with and shows up in our thinking. Being able to consciously choose thoughts that feel good and raise our vibration ripples that good feeling and vibration into the surrounding mental climate and impacts the others around us. Kathleen Hendricks, one of my mentors, says that we are all tuning forks, and we're all just pinging off of each other all the time. And that becomes more and more true as our world gets faster and as we don't always have time to put these exact labels that we can identify in a specific moment and then judge and then criticize and then manipulate into what we're going to believe about it happen. So that we just kind of automatically feel good next to someone. We automatically feel, oh, someone's hurting. We automatically feel these different things about each other because we are living in a consciousness that is a field of energetic vibration. Now, the last line of the quote is, thoughts of love and prosperity, of health and faith create a harmonious mental atmosphere. Well, it seems pretty obvious to me. I think that it's something anyone would pretty much have agreed with, but it begs the question, so how do we go from real person thoughts to creating thoughts that will make a mental climate of surrounding peace and love happen? Because no matter how unity we are on Sunday, no matter how evolved we think we are and how spiritual and how studied and how educated and how smart and how strong of a brain muscle we have, we're human beings. We're human beings living in time and space. So we have those other kinds of thoughts, and sometimes they take us down a rabbit hole for a while. So how do we get out? Well, remember I told you that there was another definition for the word negation, and the other definition was to nullify and render ineffective. And when I read that definition, I thought, oh my gosh, that sounds like a denial. And denials and affirmations are one of the cornerstones of unity. It was in one of the first books published by Unity, Lessons in Truth by H. Emily Cady. And if you read that chapter in that book, I dare you not to fall asleep, because it's written in a very complicated, wanted to be sure you understand, and how many words can I use to explain this to you sort of a way. But the bottom line is, you notice you're having a thought that you don't particularly like, or you notice that the thought spiral that you're sending yourself on hurts. You're hurting yourself by continuously focusing on this one particular thought pattern. And this approach says that to interrupt this is to deny the thought, to deny the grip of the thought, to deny the truth of the thought. And then to replace that with an affirmation of truth. So, for example, if one were to have a thought of not being good enough, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too fat, I've never done this before, how dare I? But they notice that. Then to say, that's not the truth. That's not the truth. And then you can even think about, well, this person's done it, that person's done this person looks this way and they're famous. You can come up with some ways to support this new belief that that wasn't the truth. All of a sudden, if nothing else, you've taken a breath and opened a space for, now, what am I going to focus on instead? Okay, bottom line, all there is God, and God is good, and that includes me. Wow, how can that include me? Because it has to, because I'm part of all. Oh, if I'm part of all, then that means I'm good, even though even though you've got that, even though you're thinking of doing that, even though you can have this sort of a conversation with yourself. And so there's the denial and the affirmation. Now, what I found with myself, because not to brag, but I'm really good at overthinking anything and making myself wrong about it, or finding some way to use it as a way to kind of judge myself wrong or bad in some way. And so I can do affirmations and denials back and forth fairly easily and keep it right here in a mental tug of war with words between each other. So I've started playing with how can I maybe do this denial and affirmation thing a little bit more smoothly. And here's what I came up with during a time when the man that I had been married to and had journey of divorce with, but remained best friends throughout a huge, maybe 30, 35-year part of my life when he died. It was a huge loss for me. And okay, so for the first 6 months, I was very sad and I was crying a lot. I was very sad and crying a lot, and just anything, anytime. And the good part of this journey was that I came to a point where I allowed myself to just cry in public and just be feeling the feelings that I was feeling. And then a year, I'm crying and I'm sad and I'm grieving and I'm in public and I'm emotional and allowing my emotion. 2 years later, the pain is still almost as raw as it was when I first learned he had passed. And at one point, I had a thought that was absolutely radical, which was, why are you hurting yourself so much with this? And that became a denial for me of the power of this grief that I thought had to continue to be perpetuated in that extreme level of pain. And then other things started to take its place, and I learned that underneath my grief was fear. And I was scared of being alone without this person I'd gone to for advice throughout this huge, big chunk of my life, who'd been this part of my growth from someone who'd been, in all sorts of trouble, and who'd actually been an attorney that represented me through a previous divorce, and who had been the solid rock. Who's going to be the rock? Well, didn't that open up a big door for unity and a new relationship with God and myself to come into? Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did. And all of a sudden, these teachings that I had been studying and keeping right up here and knowing just so well and memorized came forward and created an entirely new relationship and path for me. So here's a way to just kind of use this other way of doing denials and affirmations that came to me the other day, and I want to offer it to you because we don't have to get so hung up on the words. As I find myself rather frequently stuck in traffic. It does not bring out the best in me. And I was feeling very much in a negative spiral. But I had the awareness, why are you torturing yourself with this? It's not moving you 1 inch further. And do you see that you are not the only one in this situation? It's very obvious. It is very obvious, just a sea of cars. So the next thought that came to me was, good for you for noticing that. Wow, that was like an earthquake to me, because I very rarely appreciate myself for anything. So to be able to say, wow, good for you for noticing that actually became my denial. And it did that totally ineffective, nullifying effect on this thought spiral I was going on. And I could feel myself breathe, and I could actually feel the acid in my stomach start to just calm itself down. So in its place, this thought, because, we create this open space when we do this sort of peacefulness of ourselves, in came, you're safe, you're okay. And that became my affirmation, my truth. So my denial was, good for you for noticing that. And my affirmation was, you're safe, it's going to be okay. So it can be as simple as that. We don't have to go back through our unity books to find out what we should put in to be an affirmation of truth. We have it inside of us, and it can really be quite simply human languaged. So what we've been talking about is going beyond our logical, analytical brain and into imagination, and inviting play and softness and friendliness into how we greet our thoughts, and create a mental atmosphere of such a high vibration and frequency that it feels peaceful, it feels good, it is good, it is God. And if we lift everyone surrounded in our mental climate to a higher thought atmosphere, don't you imagine that's going to make a pretty big change on our entire planet? And it can all simply begin with our thought. Now, as we say at the beginning of our service, unity honors all of the paths to God, and we believe there are many forms of wisdom and many teachers. I'd like to share in our last slide this quote from Master Teacher Shel Silverstein. You have a magic carpet that will whiz you through the air to Spain or Maine or Africa if you just tell it where. So will you let it take you where you've never been before? Or will you buy some drapes to match and use it on your floor? How will you ride the magic carpet of your thoughts to make a surrounding mental climate of love and peace and healing? Thank you.